Hi, I'm Nicholeen Peck, and I'm a parenting expert, and I teach something called self-government, which means self-mastery for yourself and for your children. A lot of people wonder with my self-government program if I'm really taking into account the emotional needs that children have. I absolutely am. Emotions are part of who we are, and they do need to be addressed in a way that helps a person feel empowered and free. So in this video, we're going to talk all about why is it important to respond to children's emotional needs. Not only do I want to discuss why we need to really think about how to handle the emotional needs of children, but I want to discuss the what, the why, the how, and the when, so that we can come up with a plan for how to help our children succeed emotionally, intellectually, and physically. So what emotions do children actually have? I mean, they have the same emotions everyone has. They have fear, sadness, stress, anger. They could feel insecure or worried. Physically, they could feel sleepy. There's a lot of things they could feel, and those feelings, sometimes physical feelings, sometimes emotional feelings, can affect their overall sense of well-being and can even affect their general health. In fact, one thing that a lot of young people are feeling right now is anxiety. That's a really big one. And there are many theories out there for why this anxiety is becoming such a problem. I've got a few of my own. I'm not going to go into all of that, but I will say I think part of that is because there is a lack of skill development that is happening overall throughout society. So people are becoming much more passive and relying more on things like supply chains and stuff like that, instead of learning adult skills for how to take care of themselves, how to do things, how to build things. Life is just becoming almost too easy, right? And sometimes when life becomes too easy, people don't have confidence. When they don't have confidence to solve their own problems, whether it's relationship problems or physical problems, they get overwhelmed, and then there's more anxiety. So they start to feel smaller and smaller instead of bigger and bigger, like people feel that handle problems all the time because they're working hard and solving things on a regular basis. So that's just one idea. There are others. Some of them relate to digital devices as well. And I'm sure you've heard many different ideas about why anxiety is out there, but it's a real thing. And I think that's the thing that we've got to remember, is no matter what contributors there are, because maybe a person would have a tendency to have that anyway. But then there's contributors that make it maybe even worse, right? We could look at family dynamics and just some of the general struggles that are happening in families, and they're not staying as intact. That also takes its toll on children and can increase their sense of anxiety and feeling insecure. So there's a lot of things that are happening socially, and the result is a ton of anxiety on the population, not with the children only, but also with adults. So that's what they're dealing with. So what emotional needs do they actually have? They have a basic need to know what's going on inside. I think sometimes we just try to band-aid emotions, try to make them feel better, try to make them go away so it's not a problem anymore. They need to know what's really happening. If they feel insecure about something, don't just talk to them about their insecurity. Tell them what insecurity is, possibly where it comes from. Help them understand that they can also change their own mind on it, and they don't have to feel trapped by it. Tell them that they always have someone to talk to, and that you'll always be there for them to lend an ear and to offer suggestions for how to move on. We don't want them ever to get the feeling that they are stuck, because many of the emotional situations that children are in nowadays, adults included, makes them feel stuck, like there's no hope. So that's what they're dealing with. Now let's talk about why we need to handle things and how we need to handle things in a certain way. So our original question is, why is it important to respond to children's emotional needs? Well, because when a person is in an emotional bondage situation, they need support. They need a leader. They need somebody to lean on. And we've got to be there for them. It's so important because if they don't have somebody that is there for them, then things get pretty dire pretty fast. When I took foster children into my home, they often would come to my home with cuts all over, with depression, with a lot of issues that they were dealing with. And part of the reason that they got themselves to such a dark place was because they felt like they were alone. They didn't have anybody to confide in or get help from. Maybe their parents were dealing drugs or abusing or things like that. And so they didn't have that strong person to lean on. You know that's what parents are for, right? You're supposed to be that strong person that they always have there to discuss things with. So don't push them away because they have an emotional need. Be a true help. So how are we going to help them? Let's talk about that. Here are 6 ways for us to help our children with their emotional needs. Number 1, open communication. You know what? Sometimes we shut them down. We don't want to take the time. We don't make the time. In our family, we decided a long time ago that we would have deliberate times where we spoke together with the family as a group and as a couple and in one-on-one meetings with our children. We call these meetings mentor meetings, and then the full group meetings we call family meetings. Well, in these meetings, we establish a culture of open communication where nobody needs to feel ashamed about something that might get corrected or a topic that comes up that may seem sensitive or personal. We just talk about anything and everything feels okay. The things that makes open communication really good is if there is a tone of acceptance in that time of communication. Do you really accept your children even when they have done something terrible? Maybe they've hurt another person. Maybe they've gotten into an addiction or something like that. Do you still care about them? Of course you do. But if you allow it to go into your head and fester, and you allow yourself to take it personally, emotionally yourself, then you're not actually prepared to talk to them about it. So, our tone of accepting that happened, now what can we do about it, is really important. This goes for anything. When one child hits another, when one person, says a mean word to somebody else, anything. That happened. Now, what are we going to do about it? That's a tone of acceptance. There's other tone elements, but the important thing is that there is this feeling like it's okay. Like no matter what we talk about, it's going to be just fine. There is something liberating about that. I remember having a conversation with a young man one time, and we were just talking nonchalantly about things. And he said, I've never told anybody that before. Because I just asked him a very pointed question. He wasn't prepared that someone would just ask him something like that, so personally, but in a way that was not emotionally affected. And he said, I never told anybody that before. But it actually feels really good. I never even told my parents that. And it's because I carried this feeling with me that was like, it's okay. And I even told him, you know what? It's fine. Everybody does stuff. Don't worry about it. And I decided not to take it personally before I even ever asked a question. And he smiled at me and had this feeling of relief that it was okay, that somebody knew something about him that they'd never known before. Beautiful. That's what open communication is. Beautiful. Number 2, pre-planning and analysis. So if a person is going to really conquer what's going on with their emotional outbursts, if they are going to feel empowered, that they don't have to stay stuck in that place of bondage, they need to have a plan. And they need to feel like it's perfectly safe to evaluate themselves over and over again and maybe even change their plan. So in our family, we make plans. We talk to the children about what they want to accomplish, what skill they may need to learn a little bit better, such as maybe accepting no answers, or accepting consequences, or following instructions, or disagreeing appropriately. When a person emotionally struggles, it's usually because they're not dropping the subject in their brain. And step number 4 of the skill accepting the no answer is to drop the subject. Sometimes things don't go like you like. That's essentially the world giving you a no answer. So you've got to do the 4 steps to accepting a no answer. And that final step is drop the subject. If you can truly tell yourself, drop the subject, let it go, then you can actually become more emotionally free. You don't have to think about that thing again and again. Usually that's a big problem with people, is they overfocus on the same thing and they get stuck in a rut in their brain. They keep going to the same spot. And because they haven't been able to conquer it, they keep going back to it. But there's a catch-22 there. When you're in an emotional place, you cannot fully think. So you are going to keep going back to the same problem, and you won't be able to solve your problem because you can't think. So it's better to just say, I'm going to stop thinking about this. I'm going to just drop the subject. And then later, if I want to come back to it and try to work on it when my brain's better, then fine. So teach your children how their brains work. Teach them that self-assessment is good. Prepare them with skills they need, like how to accept a no answer, following instructions, all of those self-government skills that are so valuable. Number 3, self-government. So all these skills and things I've been talking about and pre-planning and analyzing, they all relate to a principle called self-government. It used to be that all people understood the freest among them were people who had self-control over themselves and who could solve their own problems. That's what it means to self-govern. So we have to teach our children how to self-govern, how to solve their own problems. Now, that doesn't mean we turn them loose, so don't get me wrong. We don't say, you've got a problem, go figure it out. No, because that increases anxiety and worry, and that puts them in a bad emotional place. Instead, what we do is we say, here are some skills. This is when to use the skills. This is how to use the skills, and this is how to get help. And they work on that for a long, long while, and by the time they get to be adults, then they can do that for themselves and handle their own problems. In fact, usually long before they get adults, to become adults. But don't lose heart if you have adolescents, because I was a foster parent for a lot of years for youth between the ages of 12 and 18 years old. And these youth would come to my home, and within months they would learn the skills of self-government. The older they are, the quicker they can learn it. But the younger they are, the more experience they have learning it. So each age group has its benefit when it comes to learning these skills of self-government. So self-government is number 3. When a person learns self-government, they don't get stuck in emotional bondage. Number 4 is soothe. Soothe them. The word soothe comes from the Old English word sooth, which means truth. So to soothe someone is to bring someone to the truth. What our children need in order to conquer themselves emotionally, in order to be emotionally strong people, is they need to focus on the truth. When you're going again and again and again and again to that emotional place, and you're over-processing something, you oftentimes are stuck in a position where you can only see the lie. The lie is, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this, or this is too much, it's too overwhelming. This is a lie that they feed again and again when they get stuck in that rut. The truth is, you can do this. The truth is, you can even drop the subject and let it go if you want to. The truth is, you have complete control over how you feel in the next second. So let's choose how that is, and let's take steps to do it. We have to soothe them. Bring them to the truth of their own power that they have to conquer the emotional bondage and find instead emotional freedom and strength, which is what they're looking for. Number 6, we follow up and we track our progress. So when a person is truly on this road to self-mastery and conquering those thoughts that get stuck in their head, they have to tell themselves when they've done well, when they're doing good. and they say, okay, well, when does this happen? Here's the when. Remember, I said I'd talk about the when. When does it happen that I have these emotional problems? Well, it's when I get stuck in my head. It's when my brain goes to the same place and it won't leave and come to the front and start thinking again. That's when. We've got to teach them about that. Well, when that happens, what am I going to do? And then, how did I do? We check up on that, and when we see we did well sometimes, that gives us courage to do it better the next time. So how do we do this checkup time? Well, my children often keep journals, which is a powerful thing for them so that they can track their progress with all kinds of things. But we also keep journals for our family. In the Teaching Self-Government Parenting program, we have journals for the different meetings, couples meetings journals, family meeting journals, and individual mentor meeting journals. And with those journals, we track how we're doing at accomplishing our goals at self-mastery as a family and as individuals and as couples. So keeping track of it motivates you to keep moving forward, and it shows you you're actually doing a good job. It is so important to respond to children's emotional needs in a way that empowers them, that helps them find freedom and emotional strength instead of emotional bondage, which feels like you can't ever break out of it. Let's not be afraid of emotional problems or emotional struggles that a person might have. Instead, let's prepare ourselves to be the people who can lead them to skill development and strength instead. If you've liked this video, I'm pretty sure you're going to love the next video, which is how to deal with temper tantrums, where you'll learn even more about helping somebody through an emotionally difficult time.